Hi, welcome to part 1 of my review featuring Fabula Ultima TTJRPG. If you haven't seen the other parts of my review featuring this role-playing game that attempts to bring the Japanese video game RPG experience to your table, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time we are going to talk about opportunities and attribute checks. I have to say that this particular section left me a bit disappointed. You will see why in a few moments. First, we have opportunities. These are unexpected twists in the story, sometimes good, sometimes bad. When you spend an opportunity, you may pick an option from a list or come up with a different twist that fits the current scene. So you have a menu of different opportunities. You can choose one of these options, but you can come up with whatever you think is appropriate. The Game Master has final say on whether an opportunity is appropriate to the current situation, and some spells and skills will allow you to spend opportunities in new and powerful ways. For example, Valea the Thief is hopping from roof to roof in an attempt to shake off Count Eligor's mercenaries. The Game Master calls for a Dexterity plus Might check, and Valea rolls a 7 and a 7, a critical success. The player controlling Valea describes how she loses her pursuers and chooses the favor opportunity. Her daring performance will earn her the sympathy of the villagers, who were already fed up with the Count's tyranny. So this is important. As you can see, the rules are well applied and explained here. The player carries out a task, a check, and based on the result, then you can choose an opportunity from this menu. You have things such as advantage. The next check performed by you or an ally will receive a bonus. You also have affliction. A creature suffers dazed, shaken, slow, or weak. We also have lost item. An item is destroyed, lost, stolen, or left behind. There is also plot twist. Someone or something of your choice suddenly appears on the scene. And these are just a few examples of the many opportunities. As said earlier, you can choose one of these options, or you can come up with your own opportunity, depending on the situation and the context. So it's pretty straightforward and I would say quite effective, rewarding the player with a certain authorship, a meta-authorship that breaks the fourth wall in some cases, introducing some new narrative elements. But there are also some like affliction, as I mentioned, you inflict a condition upon your enemy, or maybe you want to destroy an artifact, a relic, or a weapon that the enemy is carrying, then you could choose the lost item opportunity. So this is really fun, and I think the players are going to enjoy choosing the right opportunity or coming up with their own opportunities depending on the situation. Now here is where the inexperience and the lack of knowledge of role-playing games concerning the author or the designer becomes evident. In its most basic form, a check is known as an attribute check and works as follows. The character performing the check states which goal they want to accomplish. The Game Master may also want to further clarify what can be achieved by succeeding at a check. Sometimes the goal will be the successful application of a skill. So here, this is absolutely wrong when it comes to getting into the fiction, getting immersed, actually role-playing. The Game Master doesn't need to clarify the rewards if you are successful in your check. You're not going to be like, okay, little Timmy, if you make this jump across, you're going to land and you're going to get a bonus when it comes to running. That eliminates the surprise, that pulls out the player out of the fiction, and it turns into a, hey, you want this reward? If you carry out this check, I am going to give this to you. And every situation has the potential of turning into an analysis paralysis situation, with the player trying to find out the best alternative. Instead of being heroic and attempting things using skills, abilities, and powers, the player is going to be constantly asking or probing the Game Master for the most beneficial course of action. Let's go to step 2. The player controlling the character describes their approach to the situation, which is to say, how they intend to pursue their goal. Okay, that's simple enough. That's correct. Based on that approach, the Game Master chooses which attributes must be rolled, such as Dexterity plus Might, or Willpower plus Willpower. Sometimes, The appropriate attributes will be indicated by a specific rule. So these two steps could be better presented as: the character performing the check states which goal they want to accomplish. Okay, that's simple enough. Then the player controlling the character describes their approach to the situation, which is to say how they intend to pursue their goal. So that's great. Now, step 3. The Game Master declares the difficulty level for the check using the table on the page as a reference. Sometimes, the difficulty level will be indicated by a specific rule. The Game Master must also inform the player about what the consequences of a failure will be, making sure everyone understands what is at stake. Another mistake. You're going to be like, okay, little Timmy, if you make the jump across, you're going to get a bonus in your next action, but if you fail, you are going to get hurt. And little Timmy is like, oh no, I want to try something else. And then the entire clumsy process is going to start all over again. Okay, little Timmy, so instead of jumping, you want to climb up the ladder or the rope. If you succeed, you will be able to climb on top and you will be able to pull out your weapon. But if you fail, you're going to fall down, and it's always like that. This is the clumsiest, most inefficient way of playing a role-playing game. And it also feels like you're playing with cowardly players, those that want to know everything about the success, the failure, the outcome, before even attempting something. And this is not in the heroic spirit of Fabula Ultima. So it is truly disappointing, and you can tell that all of the sessions that the author has been carrying out so far are a constant "Mother, may I" process. Mother, may I try to climb this? Mother, may I try to use this spell? Mother, may I? And the Game Master being the mother? Yes, you may. Yes, you can. Yes, but this is going to happen. No, but this is... So you see, it's very clumsy. Now the next step. The character rolls the appropriate dice, adding them together and applying any relevant modifiers, coming from skills, spells, equipment, or other effects. Next step. If the character rolled a fumble or a critical success, apply the corresponding effects, including the automatic failure or success. Otherwise, if the result of the check is greater than or equal to the difficulty level, the character succeeds. If it is lower, the character fails. Finally, the outcome of the check changes the current situation. Either the character achieved their goal, or things took a turn for the worse. So all of this process could be simplified, could be polished as: the player wants to do something. That player describes how he is going to attempt that something. The Game Master informs the player what he or she needs to roll. And then you get the outcome based on the difficulty level. That's it. Now let's talk about difficulty levels. A check's difficulty level, or DL, is a measure of how complex and risky a certain operation can be. It abstracts several elements into a single number: the amount of knowledge and expertise required to complete the operation, any helpful or hindering circumstances such as harsh weather conditions, poor visibility, exhaustion, and the like, the lack or presence of important resources such as time, space, materials, etc. that are needed to achieve the character's goal. The kind of impact the action will have on the story, be it now or later, is also factored in. In summary, difficulty is an abstraction of how the current situation is opposing or hindering the character. So a check could be of an easy difficulty, only requiring a 7 or above. Or it could be a very hard check, requiring a 16 or more. If you are the Game Master and find yourself stumped when choosing an appropriate difficulty level for a check, just use 10, which is the normal difficulty. It is neither too low nor too high, and it's easy to remember. Now, then we have an example of checks in play. This is one of the worst examples. I'm not even going to read it to you, but suffice to say, it's the player attempting something, the Game Master informing something, the player asking many questions, metagaming, not getting into the fiction, and like I said, different from the options menu that I mentioned earlier. That's a correct way of integrating a meta aspect with the rules, but in this case, you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to attempt this, and the Game Master is, okay, Is there anything else you think you can use to your advantage? This won't be easy. You are asking him to endanger his own people, and the player is like, oh, I don't know what to do. Oh, I'm going to choose, let's say, so clumsy, so... It truly destroys the immersion. Now, I don't remember if I saw the following thing in this section, or in a section to come, but there is also an example that says, if the game master can't think of anything, he should ask the player to, oh, okay, so you succeeded. Why don't you tell me what happens? So clumsy and very lazy in my opinion. If a player is given that without such a factor being integrated into the rules of the game, the player is always going to add something to the complete advantage of the player without actually earning it because of a clever idea, or a mechanic such as the options that you can choose, the opportunities. Then we have information on success and failure. You need to keep the following in mind when you describe the impact of a check. Never subvert the outcome. No matter the premise, the outcome of the check must be applied for what it is. That said, player characters may influence checks in several ways, such as invoking traits and bonds. We will talk about that in a future part, and succeeding at a cost. We will talk about that in a few moments. Then we have relevant success. If a character succeeds at a check, they have confronted the odds and emerged victorious. The game master shouldn't call for further checks to confirm their success. They have earned it. If you think an objective requires multiple checks, use a clock. We will talk about those in a future part. And no do-overs. Just like a success should not require further confirmation, a failure means you can't try again unless the situation is drastically altered in some way. Now let's talk about the optional rule, success at a cost. This rule allows player characters to turn failure into success, but it comes at a steep price. When a character fails a check, anyone may propose a success at a cost. The game master can make adjustments to the cost as they see fit, and then the player who performed the check can accept or refuse. When determining whether a given cost would be appropriate, remember that it should put the character in a rough spot or take something important away from the character. If a cost can be remedied with little effort, something is wrong. You cannot succeed at a cost if your character fumbled the check. When you succeed at a cost, the check's high roll and result remain the same. So this optional rule is a somewhat more structured way of presenting the player a way to mitigate the situation, but it still feels like it breaks immersion in my opinion, but still it's an optional rule. You can use it if you want. And this concludes this part of the review. In the next part we are going to talk about invoking traits and bonds to reroll or modify your checks. We're also going to talk about more nuances concerning checks. Okay, so as you can see, this section, in my opinion, was very disappointing in its presentation. You do have a decent set of rules, but the way that they are carried out or presented, it truly represents how you should not play a tabletop role-playing game. Remember to check out the description of this video. You will find a link to my video where I tell you how to avoid asking questions, and I talk a bit about the history of Dungeons & Dragons, the first role-playing game. You could say that all of the good things and bad things used in tabletop role-playing games in current times had their origins there. Thank you for watching this part of the review, and thank you for your likes and your comments. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.